Hey there, Christophe from the French Herbal. If you ever wondered how to turn your bulk herbs into herbal remedies, then this book is for you. Today we're diving into Making Plant Medicine by Richo Cech. I'm hoping you will understand who Richo is and why he's an authority on making plant medicine. We'll cover what's actually inside the book and why herbalists have been keeping this manual handy for over 25 years. Okay, so first of all, here's a bit of background information on how I came across this book. I'm a big fan of Strictly Medicinal Seeds, a medicinal seed company created by Richo Cech, the author of this book. I don't know when exactly he created the company, but it's been a while. It's family run, organic certified, and it carries values that I care about. I trust them. I was a client when it was called Horizon Herbs, and I grew a whole medicinal garden thanks to their outstanding seeds. I cultivated around 120 medicinal species at the top of my gardening years. So when you grow, when you pick, or when you buy bulk herbs, you need good, solid reference books on how to make your own herbal remedies, right? And those references need to be written by people who have done the work over and over again. They made so many gallons of tinctures, of syrups and oils that they know the process inside out. And they messed up some batches because errors are important too. That's how we learn, right? So in the 2000s, when I got into herbalism in the US, there was one reference we were all using to make tinctures. Everybody knew it, everybody used it, to my knowledge. It gave you the right ratios and alcohol percentages, and it was Michael Moore's Materia Medica. It was so foundational that I asked Donna Chesner, Michael's wife, if I could translate the document into French and make it freely available to my French readers. And Michael had just passed away, and Donna kindly agreed. I think Michael Moore's work should not be constrained by any frontiers or languages. And there was nothing in the book format until Richo wrote Making Plant Medicine in the year 2000. There was also James Green's book, and we'll talk about it in another review. But I think that was it. And if you have other books in mind published in the early 2000s on making herbal remedies with detailed methods, please let me know and I will update the article going with this episode. So I bought my copy of Making Plant Medicine in 2007, I believe, and I have been using it since then. So that little guy has over 20 years of use. The book, or at least my version of the book, is 276 pages long, and it's organized into two main sections, the methods and the formulary. The first part teaches you about the methods, and that is the starting point of the reflection in this section. So plants are secondary to the method. And Richo explains how to extract medicine from plants using 7 different techniques. 7 different product categories, if you will. And each one has a specific purpose and is explained in a lot of detail. If you're a beginner, you will be able to follow along. And if you're an experienced herbalist, I'm sure you'll find new, interesting information. Tinctures are the star of the show here. Tinctures use alcohol to extract both water and fat-soluble compounds from herbs. Richo presents 2 approaches to tincture making. The first one, the so-called folk method, is what your grandma could have done. It's like loosely filling a jar with herbs, you cover with alcohol, you wait, you strain, and it's done. Very simple. The problem with that method is inconsistency. You don't really know what strength and concentration you're getting. Is this batch stronger than the last, weaker? Well, you don't know because you did not measure. That said, the folk method is perfect for beginners and home medicine makers. Low stakes, forgiving, and it works fine for common and safe herbs. Next, he explains the weight to volume method. And here we're getting into something more accurate, right? And this is a method I have used from the start because it is a lot more accurate and reproducible for a professional practice. And here you get the exact ratios for fresh herbs, usually 1 part herb to 2 parts alcohol. For dried herbs, it is 1 part herb to 5 parts alcohol. The process takes 2 to 3 weeks with daily agitation when you use the dried plant. And you may wonder, why those ratios? Where do they come from? Well, my understanding is that they are empirical. Generations of pharmacists in the 1800s, maybe beginning of the 1900s, experimented with different ratios, different alcohol percentages. They compared the different batches and they came up with optimal ratios. Like if you put more alcohol, you won't necessarily extract more constituents. And if you put in less alcohol, then very often you won't have enough solvent to extract and to cover the herb as well. And as you will quickly realize, even with those optimal ratios, one of the challenges is to have the alcohol cover the herbs. And that is a whole separate discussion. Alcohol percentage will vary according to plant constituents. If a plant contains a high amount of terpenes, which means mostly aromatics and or resinous compounds, then a high percentage of alcohol is required. An example would be green dahlia, very sticky, full of resins. Another example, if a plant contains a high percentage of alkaloids, then a high percentage of alcohol and a bit of vinegar will optimize the extraction. An example would be ephedra. It's all in the book, right? I had been taught to use 96% alcohol for any fresh plant tincture. And what I like is that Richo brings this down to 75%, which I agree works very well too, and it helps us to save on our precious stash of 96% alcohol. Okay, then we move on to vinegar extracts. They have a shorter shelf life, but they can be used for those who want to avoid alcohol. And I mean, vinegar will never be as good as a combination of alcohol and water for extraction, but they can make pretty good preparations. In the book, we find some examples like thyme, oregano, elderflower, or calamus vinegar. Then we go to glycerites, another non-alcoholic extraction method using glycerin. And here again, glycerin is far from being a great solvent, but it will work for certain herbs. You need at least 55% glycerin to prevent bacterial growth, and dosages of the final product will be higher compared to tinctures. In the book, we find some examples like fresh chamomile flowers, fresh echinacea root, dried elderberries, fresh jiaogulan leaves, and more. And I have made all of those and they taste great. Tea and decoctions are next. They're the simplest method, and these are your everyday preparations. Everything you need to know is in the book. Then we move on to syrups, and if I simplify, a syrup is pretty much a mix of a strong herbal tea or decoction with honey or sugar. Then we move on to oils, salves, and creams for topical applications. Herbal oils involve infusing plants into oils at a precise temperature. Then with the right amount of beeswax, we can turn oils into salves. We can also make an emulsion with an oil and a water-based preparation, like a hydrosol, to make a very simple and yet very pleasant cream. What makes all these methods reliable is that Richo insists upon meticulous record keeping, to enable you to repeat successful batches. He insists on precise measurements and understanding the solubility of different plant compounds. So he makes you think and become independent along the way. A quick pause to let you know that you can grab my free ebook on preparing herbal teas for the 4 seasons. It's full of simple recipes and blends you can make with herbs you can buy or even grow almost anywhere. The link is right below this episode. I hope you enjoy it. The second part of the book covers the plants. So the plant is the starting point of the reflection, and preparation methods are secondary to that. For each plant, Richo gives you the best preparation. He covers over 100 medicinal herbs. Some are specific to an American-based practice like yerba mansa or golden seal, but most are well known in a European practice. And for each herb, he gives us which parts to harvest and why, specific extraction methods for that herb, recommended dosages, contraindication and safety concerns, and conservation status, because he cares about sustainable harvesting. Herbs covered in this section include echinacea, ashwagandha, valerian, lemon balm, comfrey, and many others you probably never heard of, but might need to use one day. What makes this book special to me is that you feel the experience. I mean, Richo hasn't just read about herbs. He has grown them, extracted them, refined the methods, documented what works and what doesn't when I was still in herbal kindergarten, right? Let's talk about what actually happens when you have this book by your side. Let's say you've grown echinacea in your garden for immune support during the winter. And maybe we're in October or November and you have dug a couple of plants to use the roots. So you turn to the formulary section and you go to echinacea and you find all the information you need. And I'm not going to read the whole section, but just extract to show you how rich and precise the instructions are. Regarding the parts used, well, he says the roots dug during dormancy and used fresh or dried, and the roots are the classical parts. But he also talks about the leaves and flowers without the stems, harvested at peak flower, which is another period, and used fresh or dried. That is a lot less usual. And the seeds harvested at maturity and dried. And not a lot of people know that. It makes very strong preparations. Regarding preparations, tincture of the fresh parts. Why fresh? Well, because he explains echinacea contains unstable constituents that will get damaged in storage. So it's much better to use the fresh plant. Then he tells us that the water-soluble polysaccharides lend a sweet initial taste to the preparation, and the alcohol-soluble alkylamides are responsible for the oral buzzing sensation experienced when you taste a good quality extract. And if you ever tasted an echinacea root tincture, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The seed is particularly high in those alkylamide constituents, so a tincture of the seeds will be particularly buzzing in the mouth. That's very useful information if you want to do quality control. Then he suggests a glyceride of the fresh parts. Very good. I tried it. Very good. 1 to 2 as a ratio with a solvent of 100% glycerin. And then direct consumption. A small piece, 1 to 2 grams of the fresh or recently dried root may be held in the mouth and slowly chewed. This is as effective as any fancy preparation, he says, a practice that comes to us from the original American herbalists, the Native Americans. You see, in a few paragraphs, we have learned so much about echinacea. First, how to taste a good preparation. Then the fact that we can tincture the seeds to obtain a very strong preparation. That the fresh plant can be turned into a glyceride. And that chewing a small part of the root is as effective as any preparation. And last, the fact that the dried herb does not last very long in storage. The book contains contraindications. Maybe you're taking certain medication, or maybe you have certain health conditions. Should you use echinacea? Well, the book tells you very briefly. Now, please note, this is not a clinical practice herbal book. For clinical strategies, dosages, risks of interaction with drugs or other considerations, this is not like a Meals and Bone, which I reviewed in a separate episode on my channel. This is a medicine making book, and it should be used as such. The price, $24.95. I mean, this is one of the lowest cost investment you can make in actual herbal expertise. Check the ratings on different online stores. Check the comments and the reviews from owners of this book. I mean, this is good stuff. Simple, no frills, just useful information. And that's it for now. Thanks for listening. I will see you very soon for the next episode of The French Herbal.